You know I can't count that high. You got to stay under my fingers and my toes. All right.
What? Did you keep all your fingers after the infantry and all your toes?
I still got all of them. I mean, they don't all bend like they're supposed to, but they're there.
Okay, so you can count to 24. Got it.
Wait, what? I don't think you understand how biology works, Doc. All right. Maybe we got to send you back to the schools. All right. So, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. So, without further ado, we have another interesting and distinguished panel of guests. By panel, I mean two. We've got reoccurring guest Jonathan Yanez. So can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers, John?
Sure. My name's Jonathan Yanez. Like JR was saying, I've been writing science fiction fantasy for almost 10 years. And as you'll see later on in the podcast when we start talking about it, starting to make the transition now from writing and publishing novels to now writing and producing scripts.
Outstanding. And the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we first found them. So as I've mentioned, every time he comes on the show, because he's been on a few times, we like him, mostly because he's got a nice wife and she gives us free books. But Jonathan and I met in a sci-fi authors group way back when, and the rest is history. And then we just sort of drug Doc kicking and screaming into the insanity. And, she didn't run away yet. So I guess we're stuck with her.
I don't run unless there's an emergency.
John, your wife won me over when she gave me free ebooks.
I think, we've. I think I've known you since maybe like 2018.
Yeah, we met in one of the author groups that got shut down, but it was 2017 when we first started talking.
Oh, 2017, yeah. So
and then we met in person in Vegas in 2018.
That's right, yeah. And you've been kind enough to have me back. You didn't learn your lesson the first time.
No, we didn't. But that's okay. I'm a glutton for punishment. And next, we have the famous director, Mr. Matthew Charles Hall. I even said I was going to pronounce that right in the introduction. I just cursed myself. But can you introduce yourself to your as yet unrealized adoring fans?
I was going to say the famous Matthew Charles Hall. I was like, I am most assuredly not he. But I'm flattered to be here. And thank you guys so much for having me on. And I'm a primarily a documentary filmmaker, but I do genre films as well, based here in Southern California, and I've been in the independent film production circle since 2008. I had my first film at a film festival, and it's a bug that has bitten me, and I'm still dealing with the side effects all these years later. So I'm happy to be here.
Outstanding. And we actually found Matthew through Jonathan.
Because Jonathan kidnapped him and said, Here, you're going to do this.
That's right. And we like all of our kidnapped guests. But so I've actually recently discovered there's a lot more indie content out there for movies than I thought. Mm-hmm. We found the Dust channel, if you're familiar with that. And I didn't realize if you're creative enough, exactly what you can do with movies on an independent budget. Mm-hmm. So that's impressed me. And they do it with real acting instead of just green screen and special effects.
That's the only way to do it.
Well,
in my book.
Some of the more professionally produced movies, they rely so much on the special effects that it's like the actors forgot how to act.
I would definitely agree with you.
It's and like we could have posing in front of the screen. So it's always nice when you see people that are like, oh, who knew? Actors acted still.
Right, absolutely.
All right, so Jonathan, this one is for you. How did you link up with Matthew?
I think it was just fate. Matt saw me from across the lawn at a barbecue and our eyes met. Now we just started talking about everything, science fiction, fantasy. I think I threw out maybe a phrase in Jumanji and he started laughing. We started talking about Indiana Jones and then Star Wars. Then I found out that he was a director and I talked to him that I was starting to write scripts. And then I think, pretty much we just secluded ourselves for the rest of the barbecue and didn't talk to anybody else. We were just talking about books and movies and TV shows.
Doc, I think we're in trouble. I think I have a bromance competition now. I don't know how to feel about this.
I think you'll still lose.
Thanks. Boost of confidence. I just needed that.
JR, you are wonderful at many, many, many things. Yeah.
I feel a butt coming on.
Everyone got really quiet. Everyone got really quiet just then.
All right, Doc, ask him the religion questions. And you get to pick who goes first, Doc.
It's okay. You and Nance too. So, what?
I said you get to pick who goes first on each of these religion questions, but We might have to pick
That
one
is
to
his
get it
cue
right.
to remind me to tell you which one should answer first.
Yes, that
So-
was very subtle of me.
Sometimes, man, sometimes. So our first round of questions are Flight of the Navigator, Space Camp, or Last Starfighter. Matthew, you're new, so you can go first.
Well, I think I'm gonna go with, and you're already making me alienate people by picking favorites. I think I'm gonna have to go with the book of that chapter of movie history from the early '80s, The Last Starfighter.
Last Starfighter is my favorite
excellent
out of
choice.
them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Last Starfighter. I think it's a very fun movie, and it still holds up so well, and it's a little. Yeah, I like that one. I think the visuals still hold up, and I like the story, and I love the romance. It feels like very much a product of its time, but in a good way.
I showed my son the Space Camp one, and he's like, "Why didn't they just pull out their cell phone? They could have done all of this from their bunk. Why did they sneak out?"
Yeah.
You innocent child. Yeah. All right. What about you, John?
I think I have to agree. It's been a long time. Like, in all honesty, it's been a while since I watched it, so I'll have to rewatch it, but I have good memories of it.
Fair enough.
Of what? Last Starfighter or Space Camp?
No, The Last Starfighter.
I never even saw Space Camp, so.
Oh, wow.
You're missing out. You need to watch that.
No, I'm not missing out. I'm reading. There's a difference.
Okay.
So-
Here, I'll give you that one.
Now we're going for, I know which one I like out of these three. So Red Sonja, The Golden Child, or Willow. Jonathan.
I don't know what the Golden Child is, but I definitely know what Red Sonja is and what Willow is. What's the Golden Child?
I watched The Golden Child like so many times. I think Eddie Murphy's
Yes, it's Eddie Murphy.
in it. So it's
Yep. It's a campy
I'm
sort of
horrible with it.
Eastern meets Western style karate type movie.
Oh, that sounds
More
like fun.
popular in the 80s.
It traumatized me when it came to oatmeal.
I don't know that it would be considered culturally acceptable these days. Everybody gets really offended about things, so I don't know that would stand up in a modern audience. But it was period of a product of its time.
When I
Dude,
was 7, my babysitter flipped out and told me it was a horror movie and I wasn't allowed to watch it.
But
I
you're not
watched it, but I'd already watched it with my dad 5 times.
Let's see. Okay, so I think I'd have to go with Willow then. I think Willow's pretty classic, and with Val Kilmer in there, right? Val Kilmer was like the main
Yeah.
character.
They're
Yeah.
supposed to be making a second one of that.
They're supposed to be making a second of a lot of things.
Yeah, we'll see if it happens. But I mean, it's cries out for a sequel, but you just can't redo it. You got to just move the story forward. All right, what about you, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go with Willow. That's no contest for me. It's a beautiful Ron Howard film, and it's a highly underrated James Horner score. To me, that's like a definitive sword and sorcery epic in my book. And Val Kilmer's great. He's like peak Val Kilmer, you know. Warwick Davis is so great, and he gets like actual face time. He's not playing, he's not an Ewok. He's not playing roles that he's got to wear a lot of costuming. It's like he gets to really be himself, and I really like that. And it's a beautiful Ron Howard film, highly underrated.
I like that they had this best swordsman in the universe that it was filmed in, and we almost never see him with a sword. I like that sort of dichotomy. For some reason, that's always seemed as like really good storytelling to me.
Oh, absolutely. And he's such a clumsy, he's always drinking and everything, and yeah, he's not necessarily a super likable character the whole time, but you fall for him anyway.
Yep. All right, Doc.
Okay. So next we're kind of going to go round robin and let everybody answer. But what was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy? And we're going to start with Matthew.
Mm-hmm. For me, it was definitely sci-fi. I was probably 3 years old at my sister's apartment, and I was peeking around the sofa, and Darth Vader was on the TV, and I knew I was scared to death of him. It was the opening scene of Return of the Jedi when he comes off the shuttle. And so I remember that, and because I was born in '85, so I got a lot of these movies out of order on initial viewings, and Star Wars, I certainly saw the trilogy all out of order. And then of course Star Trek 4 like the later of the original series was coming out theatrically. So it was definitely like Star Trek 4 repeated viewings at my house, because that was the safest one, for a kid to watch with the whales, and then definitely. So it was Star Trek first, and then about 10 years old, Star Wars hit, and I've never been the same since. But definitely sci-fi for me.
We grew up with the 80s and the 90s where the movies had the actual good soundtracks. Whereas nowadays, I think the soundtrack quality of some of these modern movies they've gone as pale imitations of what used to be. I mean, like the soundtrack, the Imperial March. I mean, come on, you can't beat that.
You can do CPR to that, and it's the correct pacing.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. That's right up there with Last of the Mohican for.
I am a medic, so
I forget sometimes because you can't count, the number of fingers and toes. So.
I can count.
That's one. Your start. What comes next? All right.
I can also speak sign language.
What about you, John?
I think it was fantasy. I think the earliest I remember is like at a super young age reading Chronicles of Narnia. Ooh, and then a little bit later Lord of the Rings. But I think it was Chronicles of Narnia that really sucked me in. I can remember reading a lot of like Dragonlance books and some of the Star Wars books. Have fond memories of those too. So a lot of reading. And then on the sci-fi side, I think the earliest memories, I remember I was sick, and it was like a big thing to be able to watch TV like in our bedrooms. But since we were sick, my dad had like set up the TV in our bedroom so we could watch TV from bed. And somebody had loaned us the Star Wars movies on VHS.
Nice.
So that's probably one of my earliest memories of sci-fi, and just like being sick, not super sick, but a little bit sick, and just like watching Star Wars in bed and how cool it was.
That's sick enough where you don't go to school, but you're underfoot if you're at home. Yeah.
So have you passed that love on and read those books with your kids?
Yeah. So our 5-year-old, we've already been doing audiobooks with her.
You can't be 5. Like yesterday she was born.
I know. It's bananas how time seems to speed up when you have kids. But yeah, definitely passing on the tales that, I grew up with to her.
Outstanding.
You know what? I'm starting to think maybe I should have just put on audiobooks and then never had to read to my kid, because I suck at reading out loud.
If you need a break, I mean, like you find a good audiobook with a good narrator, and it's like a performance, you can do different inflections with their voice. And I mean, it might keep his attention.
He's now older and into the graphic novel scene. So.
You want to mess with someone who likes graphic novels and manga and stuff? Tell them they're picture books. I did that at Barnes & Noble this past week when we took the boy shopping, and it's like 12 people in the aisle just stopped and stared at me, and they're like, let's get him. He speaks heresy. It's hilarious. And of course, all the other parents that were there were just laughing. Everybody but the kids thought it was hilarious.
I can totally see that. And you know what?
Now I'm going to get hate mail, but it's okay.
You deserve it. So, Matthew kind of already answered this question of what your first memory of engaging in the speculative fiction genre was. But Jonathan, since Matthew answered already, what's your answer?
My first memory in engaging with it?
Yeah.
I still want to say it was reading Chronicles of Narnia. Like, I know probably viewing something came first at some point, right? Because I could watch something before I could read. But I can't think of what I would have watched or anything that I saw that would have come before starting to read. Yeah, I can't. I think Chronicles of Narnia is my first, like, at least the first one that really impacted me. That I can remember.
The cool thing about that is we've done some authors where we've interviewed them multiple times. You're not the only one. And I've noticed a lot of them, every time we ask the question, we get a different answer, because they're like, oh, what about this? And then they keep remembering, because, you don't remember what you don't remember, obviously, until you do. Well, that sounded really witty. Oh, I'm smart tonight. But
you know what? It happens.
But yeah,
I cheated when you asked me this question, and I was like, I don't remember a time without it. So
Yeah, but
there.
you're a like second generation nerd, so I mean it was bound to happen.
You know what? I am.
I've talked to your mother. I know. All right, Doc.
Yeah,
Let's
I
get
know.
moving
Yeah,
before I
it's
derail
okay.
the train completely.
So, what is it that you love about the speculative fiction genre? Matthew, you get to go first.
The speculative fiction genre, I guess. I mean, that's such. We could talk for forever about that. I think for me, it's just a total escapism. You know, in the finest sense, in that anything goes. You know, and so I would say that I think is the biggest thing for me. And when you're a kid, you know, when you're that impressionable age, you know, 4 or 5, and it's like, all right, it's reading time. You know, it's like you're grabbing anything you can. And you're just like, you know, and as a kid, you consume things over and over and over again. And it's interesting to see like what you kind of take from that and what you kind of take from, you know, I too remember reading Narnia, probably like first grade. And I remember that was really the first time that I felt emotional about, you know, words in print, you know. And I remember seeing the BBC television version of Chronicles of Narnia, which might have been made in the like early 80s or late 70s with pretty limited visual effects, you know. But I just remember being like, that's not how it was in my mind, you know. And so for us, especially now from a filmmaker standpoint today, you know, in that genre, you know, budget, when you're picturing in your mind, budget isn't a problem, you know? So I think that's what I like most about it, is that it's pure escapism. It gets you away from the harsh reality that we live in. And I've always gravitated towards you know, specifically sci-fi and like pulp adventure, you know. I was a history major, so a lot of stuff that falls within those confines, you know, Indiana Jones and stuff like that. But for me, all that stuff really, you know, I was a nerd growing up, and I'm a professional nerd now, you know. So what was that?
Put professional nerd on your business card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think that's what I like most about it. You know, I feel like all of us could kind of give a similar answer to a degree, you know.
Okay. All right.
No, I was going to ask if Jonathan wanted to add anything or to the answer.
Yeah. So I think for me, the reason I like it the most is it's freedom. I'm not a really big rules person. Don't like a lot of rules. So when I get to sit down and write, it's just like freedom. I'm just like on this adventure with these characters. And as Matt and I'll probably talk later, like when we were coming up with the idea and outlining, I was just telling him like, I don't need a whole lot of structure. We just need like know our characters really well. And then we'll figure out the rest with them. We'll just go on this journey.
I can like
them.
hear my English teacher from junior high going, Miss Blitzel going, Cisca, I know I said you could be free with this, but you still have to follow the rules of grammar.
One of my favorite
that may have been a discussion or two.
Yeah, for sure. One of my favorite sayings is know the rules before you break them. So at least if you're breaking them, at least you're aware that like, hey, keep this to a minimum, or this isn't usually done. But I'm a big fan of still breaking them anyway, but just at least knowing, being aware of it.
Nope. She was also the teacher who told me that if you're going to misspell a word, misspell it consistently throughout. Pick a spelling and stay with it.
Commit to it.
Well, she goes, you know, that way she only counted off points one time for a misspelling then. But if you misspelled it 3 different ways, that was 3 points.
Oh, that's good. I didn't think of that.
So
fair. So we're going to start with you this time, Jonathan. How did your love of speculative fiction as a genre transition into you writing stories in it? You've told us a little bit before, so we'll accept the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah. I was just in a job that I didn't really want to be at. I feel like life is a gift and we got one shot at this. We got to make it count. So when I was at that job that I really wasn't happy with, finally just put my back against the wall and decided this is what I really want to do. I really want to tell stories and I really want to write books. So quit my job, cashed in my 401k. So there's no safety net. Didn't tell my wife I was doing this. So just tell her, I quit one day.
And she truly loves you because you're still alive.
Yeah, we're still together.
So
Yeah, I
I
just
feel,
burned my boats. There was no going back. There's no option but to succeed. And then I just started writing. And
I,
100 rejections later, I got my first publishing deal. And then I decided, like, hey, I don't need a publisher. I could just be my own publisher. I could just do this myself. Started our own publishing house, and it's just been a whirlwind from there.
I feel like that's going to be the title of your autobiography, No Safety Net. Like that's just like the sort of perfect metaphor for your life.
Matt,
Having known you for years.
Matt and I we've had a bunch of different meetings kicking off this film project, but in one of the meetings, I forget how it came up, but I think the saying was desperate and reckless. Somehow Matt said desperate and reckless, and I was like, oh, that's going to be the name of my autobiography.
That works too.
We got a few working titles now at this point.
Yeah.
So now we'll pass the question to you. Obviously, as a director, you're doing things instead of on the book side with the movie side, but how did your love of the genre of speculative fiction translate into you becoming a creator of content in that space?
I mean, it's just when you're given the, I think it was Spielberg who said filmmaking is the chance to live many lifetimes, And so with each project that I've done, whether it's a documentary or a fiction, a narrative fiction piece, it's really putting everything that you know and love in the same way that Jonathan does, where he finds his influence, where he finds his inspiration, the things that, make up a part of who he is and why he loves this genre. It's kind of the same thing for me, to the chance of like, well, what can I do that pays homage to the films that I grew up on as a kid, and you certainly don't want to just remake that, but you want to have your own spin on that, your own view, And so I would say, I think for me, it's the chance to kind of create that same sort of feeling in an audience's, stomach when they're watching a film. If they can get invested in the characters in the same way that I love to see, myself, or as a kid, the stuff that I love to see, if you can just get recreate a fraction of that love for something, I feel like then I've done my job, So I think most about it. Oh, that's what I just was saying. I think that's what I like most about it, is entertaining someone and telling a story. I truthfully don't read a ton of contemporary fiction, but what I was going to say is it's trying to recreate that feeling in an audience when they see something, and if they're entertained, then I feel like we've done our job.
Okay. So I know as authors, the general rule of thumb is either 10% or the first 1 or 2 chapters. If you haven't hooked them by then, you've lost them. Is there a similar rule for movies? Do you have a certain set of time to hook them as viewers before you've lost them?
Yeah, absolutely. Gone are the days that, we'd all go to the Blockbuster on a Friday night and rent 2 movies. And those were the 2 movies you had all weekend, right? And you had to watch them. And if they sucked, you're like, all right, I guess I picked it out based on the Drew Struzan cover art, and I'm taking it home, and that's what I'm going to watch. But nowadays, you have endless possibilities with Netflix and Hulu and all these different streaming platforms. And if they'll just start a movie, and it's like, if you're not glued to it in the first 30 seconds, you're onto something else. So it's only become more competitive, and it's got to be gripping, and Jonathan, this in writing your fiction, you have to have someone hooked by, the first few pages. So
Yeah.
I think for filmmakers, it's the same thing, and even more so because everyone's consuming video content, and for us independents, it's even more difficult. Everyone's going to go out and see, the new James Bond or Dune because it's James Bond and Dune, right? But if because it's name recognition, they're already committed to it because they already know the characters. But for someone who's doing something fresh and original, it's a constant uphill battle.
So do you feel like there's still room in the market for the slow burn with movies if you've only got that first few minutes to grab them?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I loved The Green Knight. I don't know if you guys saw The Green Knight with Dev Patel. But I got a lot of, I was reading online. People said it takes forever to get through this movie. It's so slow, and it's like I'm watching it from a filmmaking standpoint, and I'm hanging every frame of that movie is just stunningly beautiful, But my thing would be if you have a good story to tell, then that should be enough. However you want to tell it, don't necessarily give in to the expectations of, all right, I need an action sequence on page 2, or in minute 2, of this movie. I still think about, if it's a good story, it's going to sell itself.
All right. So many authors or filmmakers will let their own real life experiences influence the stories they tell. So were there any formidable moments that shaped you as a storyteller, Jonathan?
So just moments like as I'm growing up that I kind of look back on now as I'm telling stories?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I have memories of my mom taking my brother and I to the library and then just, filling up crates of books. And we'd fill up like a crate of books and take them back home and read them all week, and then, return to the library and then take another crate of books home. And I think that's helped, whether I knew it or not at the time. I think that's helped and kind of formed me into the storyteller that I am now, where I'm able to kind of look back and think back on those stories and look at how they influenced my writing today.
Okay. And what about you, Matthew? Was there any formidable moments that shaped the way you tell stories now?
Yeah, I would say, growing up with my grandparents, certainly, and that kind of influence as a kid. My parents weren't really into pop culture when I was at a very young age. So what I did get to see, or was able and allowed to see, my parents, were fairly conservative, and I didn't get a chance to see a lot of stuff until I got older. So when I did, I hung on every frame of that. I hung on every word, of that. So I think that kind of experience, my children's film, the David's Dinosaur, the movie we took to Lionsgate, it's a story about a little boy with his grandfather, and for me, it's like I would give anything to have one more day with my grandfather. I think most people would, and so for me, it's like, what can I do in a cinematic realm, to recreate that, or to create a highly stylized version of that, but that's, I'd say that being very young and kind of just discovering, discovering sci-fi, my love of Jules Verne and stuff like that, is really why, and that spirit of adventure, and exploration. I think that's why I gravitated to Star Trek as a kid. I gravitated to Star Wars, certainly. And appreciate different aspects from both of them, but love them very much the same. Jurassic Park, it came out when I was 8. That was probably my Star Wars,
Yeah.
And so all of that kind of stuff really just shaped who I am. The possibility that this could happen, Star Trek could happen. We just have to get to that. We just have to get to that point. And it's a few steps away, and you just got to take it one step at a time.
Jurassic Park was when I woke up and I realized that fiction could teach you moral and philosophical lessons. That famous line, we were so busy figuring out if we could that we never stopped to figure out if we should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and if you've read Crichton's novel, and I read it when I was 8. I read it, probably the only contemporary fiction that I will continually reread. Like every few years, I revisit that one. But it's like you look around at what's going on right now in the world, and it's like we are literally at that threshold, Yeah,
no, it is. I think 2020 showed how disturbingly accurate real life can mimic the art that we've been reading.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, there were definite points where John Ringo has his Black Tide Rising series where I was going, okay, no, stop, bad John Ringo.
Put the magic 8 ball down.
Yeah, no. So, but getting back onto the focus of you guys, these questions, Jonathan's answered them a couple times for us. So if you're really curious about Jonathan's answers, go check out those episodes. These are going to focus on Matthew's experiences with fandom.
Oh gosh.
I know. And I can always get to ask these because they're fun for me.
That was a little bit too dark of an evil laugh. Like I'm getting some supervillain vibes. So
You're not the director here. Shush. Okay, so have you gotten any cool fan art or a cosplay of one of your characters yet from something you've worked on?
No, I haven't. So I did direct the Audience Choice Award winner for 2018 Star Wars Film Festival.
Oh, cool!
It was a Lucasfilm sponsored and blessed Lucasfilm blessed event, and we had access to the Ben Burt sound library and stuff like that. So it was insane, and I got to direct the actual droids in it, which was a dream come true. So that's the closest I've had to like people showing, like when we screened the movie, people came in costume and it was,
cool.
It was so cool. So that's really the only like cosplay I've seen from a project that I've done.
You should come to Dragon Con because they have droid meetups.
Oh, cool.
I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
So as a director, you have lots of props, but you also do it on a budget. So do you get to keep any of your props? Like, is there any cool ones you've kept along the way?
There's a few.
I mean, they might have fallen off the back of a truck or something. We won't judge.
Yeah. No, I have a lot of cool props from. I've got some swords. The blacksmith from Pirates of the Caribbean was a blacksmith on my movie, and I kept all the swords that he had made.
I would too.
He made the hook for Spielberg's Hook, and so I have a whole bunch of like people like, oh, how do you have all these like random things? I do have a lightsaber from the Star Wars shoot. And then for my dinosaur film, I have like the actual dinosaur egg that hatches and some dinosaur claws. And because we built an animatronic puppet for that. And trying to think of what else that I have. Oh, I have in one of my films, there's a huge like submarine miniature. It's like this big rusted submarine model that was laying on its side on the rocks. And so I have the miniature in my entryway when people walk in, like, are you into submarines? And I was like, no, but that was in my movie. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You brought us good guests, Jonathan. We appreciate this.
Yeah, no, for sure. When we were starting to gear up and get ready to shoot this pilot, you guys were the first people that I thought of.
Aw,
thank you.
Jonathan's so nice. We like him. We can keep him, JR. He starts with
He
J.
does give us free books, so.
Has anybody asked for your autograph away from like a signing or something? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not famous at all, but I, when I was doing, I had a film at the Cannes Film Festival, and I had my recent documentary. We toured internationally with it, and so I did a lot of signings for like the poster's really cool for it. So it's a documentary called The Longest Road, and it screened at a lot of events. And so people would come up and ask for, and it's always weird because like it doesn't even feel like that kind of project, But I would sign posters for people and stuff like that. And it's always very humbling that someone wants to meet you and talk about what they just saw. And like for me, those are the reviews that I care the most about, is when you meet people in person after a movie and they say, oh, I love this part in it, and it's the part that I never thought someone would actually like. That's your favorite part? Oh, I'm interested to know why, And I always welcome. I love that kind of feedback and that kind of face-to-face experience, especially for like I think about me, seeing films as a kid. I wish I had that as a kid, and even now. I mean, here in Southern California, I get the opportunity to meet a lot of filmmakers at events and stuff, or at screenings and what have you. And so I realize I'm pretty fortunate that a good majority of the world doesn't really get those opportunities, So for me, it's always very flattering.
When we I think probably one of the hard things is with authors. Yes, there's the critical author reviews thing, but there doesn't seem to be as many. But like you log on to Amazon and Goodreads and stuff like that. So authors can find more individual, like these are actual fans, not hoity-toity critique people. Is that a thing for directors?
Have you never been on Amazon? Look at any
Yes, I've
movie.
been
that's
on
successful.
Amazon, but I don't shop on Amazon a lot.
If you go to any of the products, you'll get reviews tearing apart the movies. Everyone thinks they're the next, I don't know, Siskel and Ebert when it comes to writing their Amazon reviews. And
See,
some of them can be, it's like, I watched that movie. Are you sure you're reviewing the same movie?
see,
Like,
I
did you
I,
mix
I
this up?
learned long ago to ignore most people's opinions on movies, and unless I know them very well. And typically, unless I agree with their opinion on books, I'm probably not going to like their opinion on movies.
I just heard a good quote. I think it was from Denzel Washington about critics and reviews. And the quote was, "Very rarely will you be criticized by somebody doing more than you. Most of the time, you'll be criticized by somebody doing less."
Oh yeah,
I mean,
that's a good point.
that wouldn't leave very many people left to criticize Denzel Washington. So he
For
sort of
sure.
reached the apex.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think with everyone, social media has been a blessing and a curse. Everyone feels they have an opinion, and so when I did the Star Wars short, that was right after The Last Jedi, and as you know, fans were really divided on the film. And our film, it's set in it's a fantasy version, like Star Wars is an actual movie in the short film, but then it's like a Peter Pan sort of thing,
Mhm.
And so because it's like a Peter Pan alternate reality, it's like a movie about Star Wars. It's not a Star Wars movie. We're like, oh, okay, well, people aren't going to mind. It's, you see your Darth Vader's there and BB-8 is there, and so I randomly would get messages on my Facebook or Instagram, people saying those two characters didn't exist at the same time and all this stuff. And it's like, first of all, this is not canon. I'm flattered that you tracked me down on social media to vent to me about this, but I've gotten hate mail. So I mean, I did a movie on Iraqi refugees, so I've gotten hate mail.
I can imagine. I have not gotten any hate mail other than I did have somebody one time go, "Hey, look, the person running this area needs to sleep," which was ironic because I was reading that comment at 2:30 in the morning.
Oh gosh.
So I noticed this, and Doc and I have talked about this before off show multiple times, but when I took the kid to the bookstore, and I'm going through while he's looking, because the sections were side by side, I'm going through the sci-fi and fantasy section, and I'm like, oh, I know that author, and I know that author, and I know that author. That guy's a jerk, and I know. Do you get that when you go to a movie now, or you go to like a movie? I guess Blockbuster isn't a thing, but the movie section of stores, we're like, oh, I know that person, or do you have that happen now?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to know and meet a lot of individuals, and most of them are like behind the camera folks, people that you see in the credits, but you might not necessarily know their faces. But I have a few. I have mostly great stories. I have mostly really great stories. Nothing awful, And I just was thinking, this past year we lost Cloris Leachman, we lost Ed Asner, and I've been fortunate to spend time with both of them. And most of the stories that I have from the people who if they had that I've met, it's the people who are like trying to climb the ladder that have been kind of rude or kind of off-putting, and you're like, I've met and worked with Oscar winners, and they're the nicest people in the world, but it's someone who just gets a little taste of that, that sometimes can be the most difficult, and I'm just thinking to myself, you haven't earned that right to be the asshole. Sometimes.
That frustrated athlete that becomes a coach and is really bitter, that kind of thing going on.
Yeah, that for sure. That
Doesn't sound like anything I've ever said.
It's to me, it's the John Wayne quote. He says, "Keep your head low and don't talk too much," And my thing is just like, stay humble. And to me, all these people that I've known or worked with who were very successful, I would want to get a beer with them, So, and sometimes that happens, and other times it doesn't, and others, I've heard a few horror stories, but I'm sworn to secrecy.
Those NDAs, they ruin everything.
We don't want to talk about
from the lawyers.
There's too many people in this world, particularly with social media, who think being negative adds extra value. So,
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I once had to look at somebody and I go, it doesn't make you discerning. It just makes you sound like a jerk.
Yeah. Yep.
I'd use another language, but we're family friendly, or we try to be.
So have you ever spotted anyone or heard about anyone that have actually watched your movie? Since it's indie, it's more of a niche thing, right? So I can't imagine that you're constantly running into people who have seen your movies.
No, I know that a lot of people at Lucasfilm saw the Star Wars short because we won the
cool.
Choice Award. So I know that the top brass at Lucasfilm saw it. And I think there's a photo of Mark Hamill holding our poster, which to me is probably got to be insane.
That would be super cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Or he's pointing to it. I'm trying to remember what it is. But and then I'm trying to think. Now I'm on the spot of what if I know of anyone super famous who's seen my stuff. I can't recall. I'll have to think about it.
You don't have to be famous. Have you
They don't have to be famous.
Normies out and about that have seen your stuff?
Say that one more time.
They don't have to be famous. Have you run into just normies out and about, like regular folk?
Oh yeah. I've been at, especially here in Southern California. I've been, at restaurants or because my documentary, my documentary was like kind of my big project, and I'm in the film actually. So I had a few people come up and talk to me at restaurants, say, "Hey, I just saw your movie." And that's always kind of interesting. And it's flattering that they, one, recognize you, and then two, actually commit to that and say, okay, I think I'm going to go out on a limb and introduce myself and talk about it. And I always love that. And it's very flattering.
So with your documentary, you've worked with, for that one, it's what was it? I've got the name written down here in a second. And I'm definitely watching this after the show, but it was the when you get in just documentaries in general, you have people that are basically bearing their souls to you in documentaries. Is that something that's hard to process?
It's a very different way of, when I got the gig to do that film, they said, "Oh, you've made movies before." And it's like, yeah, I had made a 6-minute documentary short at the Cannes Film Festival years ago. But I said, it's essentially take all my film school and just chuck it out the window, because doing documentary film is so vastly different. And we were shooting in Iraq. We were shooting on the Syrian border. I've now done 2 films over there. And just every experience over there is so vastly different than being on a soundstage and shooting a, commercial or something, even on location or working with the Screen Actors Guild. It's just a very different, there's a raw reality to it. And, you only get one take often when you're doing a documentary. It's unfolding in front of you and you're filming it, in that sense. So
just imagine going, well, we're going to do this, and then going, never mind, that's a Shamal.
So when were you in Iraq to do this filming?
I was there in 2015 and 2016 for the first film, and I actually was just over there in March of this year shooting a follow-up, and I got sick over there. Actually, my whole team got COVID. And
COVID.
It was awful.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people get sick because of the dust in the air and all the particles and pollutants from the oil fires.
Well, because they don't have an EPA.
That too.
Yeah, they've got bigger issues over there for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. So did you enjoy, other than the fact that you got sick, did you enjoy your experience over there?
Yeah, I've been over 3 times, and in Iraq specifically, and I was on the Syrian border with this most recent film. And just the most hospitable people, just wonderful, incredible people, and
food.
Really great experience. Yeah.
It's going to make me hungry for Arabic food again.
Yeah, I
have a very suggestive palate.
It's weird to hear people going there voluntarily, because when I went there, it was at the height of the war. So it's definitely a different experience. But yeah, so what all parts of the country? I know we're derailing a little bit. Sorry, Jonathan. But what all parts of the country did you get to see while you were there?
I was in northern Iraq. I was about 200 miles north of Baghdad, and I toured all over there. We were in the front lines, in the trenches, working with the Peshmerga who were fighting back against ISIS. So I really got to see everything right up close, and got to see a lot of my buddy who's in the film. Richard Campos is his name. He's a 70-year-old Army veteran who was over there during the invasion of 2003, and just in a few days of what I saw compared to his tour over there, he said, "Oh well, we've seen so much more of the country than if we were just deployed here, you know." So I really got a really good experience over there, and like I said, I've been back now twice since then, and it just was a once in a lifetime opportunity. So although I got to go 3 times, but I still, you know, every time you never take that for granted.
So that was actually my first experience in Iraq. My first full convoy was actually resupplying them up in Mosul. So I happened to be there right as the DFAC exploded.
Oh, wow.
We were there for that. So it was definitely like I was up in those mountains in that northern region.
Yeah.
It's nothing like the desert everyone pictures when they think of Iraq. So like you were in places I crawled around in.
I was a few miles from Mosul because at the time it was occupied by ISIS, and then we went over we were in Kirkuk. We were in, but I pretty much stayed in the Kurdistan region.
Okay, all right, Doc. We got to get us back on track because I could go forever about this. That place is
Okay.
dear to my memories.
Enough of that. We're going to get back onto fandom. So, what is your weirdest or funniest interaction with a fan?
Oh gosh. Are we asking Jonathan or are we asking me?
No, we're asking you.
We've asked Jonathan.
No, man, I got all these questions asked already. This is all you.
I think it's safe to say it on the podcast because I don't think I met someone at a film screening and we dated. We dated for a while. She came and saw my film, so I guess that's probably.
I thought you were going to say Jonathan for a second. I was like, woo.
Jonathan. No, we've gone to lunch, but he hasn't bought me dinner.
Yeah, there's lunch. We have to keep it professional.
Dinner yet?
Yeah. We're taking things slow. Got to make a movie first, you know.
Yeah. See how it goes from there.
Yeah, see how it goes.
Okay. So this is kind of our Reader's Digest version of our highlights. Jonathan, can you give us your highlight reel of your body of work?
Sure. Won the Jack London Award. Just hitting multiple, Amazon bestseller lists with different titles in science fiction and in fantasy. We have our own publishing company. We started doing our own audiobooks.
Now, what's the name of your publishing company? For those
it's called Archimedes Books. So we just published myself right now, and then there's one other author that we publish. But yeah, just kind of try to push the envelope. Like whenever our company feels like we have something figured out, it's time to put ourselves in an uncomfortable position so we can learn again. So last year in 2019, January, we started with German translations. So we opened up like a German arm of our publishing house. And then we started French translations. We haven't launched yet, but we started the translation process. And then last week, I signed contracts to write a comic book series. So there's some artists who've worked on, they're video game artists primarily. They've worked on Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones video games, and Call of Duty. And they've been looking for a writer to take this new IP kind of to the next level. So we talked about it a bunch. They offered me a position, so I signed contracts last week. And I'm supposed to write episode 1 of this comic book tomorrow.
Wow,
exciting.
You'll have to come back when that goes out, and we'll talk about all the things and show all the pretty
and
pictures.
We'll bring Nick on because he likes to geek out over comic books, or as you call them, the picture books.
The picture books, but they've got him a little bit busy on the border right now, so we've got to get them to let that up just a little bit so we can snag him away to talk nerdy with us. But we
I love that music video. Sorry.
Yeah, we did talk to him this morning, so there is proof of life, people. We swear he's not chained up in anybody's basement. They're just working him over there on the border. All right, so Matthew, now it's your turn. What does your resume look like? So you've talked about The Longest Road and some of the other stuff, but what all have you directed?
Yeah, I directed a vampire World War I vampire film that we took to the Cannes Film Festival in 2000 8, so that was right when like the True Blood Twilight thing was just about to kick off. So I did that. That was a ton of fun, and I'd love to do a feature version of that at some point. And then I've done a sci-fi found footage film that went to Europe but didn't play here. And then I did a children's film called David's Dinosaur, which is safe for the family, and you can watch that with the family. And that one's probably the most widely available, which is nice. And then I did The Longest Road, which we toured to the film festival circuit, and we played on 3 different continents, and again got a lot of recognition with that, which I'm probably most proud of because it's the most personal, and I made great friends and had a wonderful experience over there. So, and then I just did a follow-up to that called Daughters of Ghaffori, which is now in post-production. And my producers were actually in Hawaii the week the world shut down with COVID. I'm doing a documentary over there called Aloha Kai, which is about the cleanup in the Pacific. So I'm a boater. I love to sail. And so there's a cleanup documentary that we're doing that I'm directing that will probably resume by the time Jonathan and I finish this project, which I'm very excited about because it's original and it's a return to narrative fiction for me. And it's I've wanted to make a movie like this since I was 6 years old and I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time. So
when you talk about cleaning up, are you talking about the beaches or the Great Pacific Garbage Patch?
No, it's the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, exactly. So it's essentially about conservation, recycle, and the damage that we're doing with plastic in the Pacific. And that'll be shooting out of Maui, hopefully in 2022. We've pushed it back this next year, and that's a pretty big crew that we're going to be taking over there. So. Right now, things are still been chaotic, and the tourism has been kind of a crisis over there. So we're putting that on hold. But the nice thing was, because of that, it allowed me to go back to the Syrian border and do Daughters of Ghaffori with my friend who, sadly, she passed away. We finished the film, and she passed away like 2 weeks later. So it was really kind of a blessing in disguise that I was able to go do it. And then Jonathan and I met, and timing has worked out for everything. Everything's worked out on this project with Jonathan, but the timing was great, and so that's kind of been my resume. And then I did the Star Wars short a few years ago. I know I'm kind of going, so a sampling of a variety of things, you know. So it's the show, and I think I've done it all.
So you mentioned your Charmed project, which is not Charmed off the TV show, just Charmed timing. So can you tell us a bit about what that is? Because that's actually why we're here today, right?
Mm-hmm. That is why we're here. Well, I will turn it over to Jonathan in a second, but to me as a filmmaker, my favorite genres are Westerns and science fiction. And so I was a huge fan of, the John Ford, John Wayne Westerns growing up, and to a lesser degree, the Man with No Name trilogy and, the Eastwood films, Sergio Leone. And then for sci-fi, it's been, Star Wars and Star Trek and Alien and all the stuff that we all, Planet of the Apes, the original with Charlton Heston and stuff like that. So this is a perfect blend of the two of those things. And I remember sitting down with Jonathan, because he said, let's do a project together. And I said, well, what do you like? Like, what do you want to do? And when he essentially read back the same list to me, I knew that it was kind of it was a sign.
Was Firefly on the list anywhere?
Yeah. I've mentioned Firefly a few times to Matthew, who's seen Serenity, right? You said you saw Serenity, but not.
I've seen Serenity. I've never seen the show. I know, and my best friend gives me for it, so I need to check it out at some point.
All right, so. You mentioned Westerns, so Clint Eastwood, yay or nay?
Oh, for sure.
The spaghetti Westerns. And did you ever read any of the Louis L'Amour books?
No, I didn't. I read some of the Zane Grey and, Jack London stuff, Call of the Wild, Iron Will, stuff like that. And a lot of like we were talking earlier about some of the pulp adventure type stuff. But no, I haven't. And I the good and bad, the ugly, for when it goes to Eastwood Westerns, I took a Western film class at film school, and we studied all that. We studied the Kurosawa samurai films, and that crossover and how he was inspired. Jonathan and I were just talking about this the other day, talking about how Kurosawa was inspired by, the Japanese filmmaker was inspired by John Ford, the American filmmaker, and they kind of like borrowed from each other, and as we all know, Kurosawa inspired, Seven Samurai inspired Magnificent Seven, and it's kind of funny to see how, or The Hidden Fortress inspired Star Wars. It's kind of funny to see how that trickles down to the next generation. And, certainly not to say, put my name alongside Kurosawa or John Ford in the slightest, but to see how that trickles down, and the next generation is kind of inspired by that. So, but anyway, that's the foundation for this project.
So did you start off like, so what was the genesis? You said, okay, we're going to work together. We've got that. But when it came to this specific project, did you start with the characters? Did you start with the kind of story arc?
Let's tell people what the project is.
There we go.
So so this will air when our Kickstarter is live. So we'll give you all the details right now. So the project is called Infinity System, and it answers the question: if we could no longer live in our world and we had to go to another planet, who would we send first? Who would be the best equipped to go in that first wave to colonize a new planet?
Not JR. His math skills suck.
So a simulation has been built called the Infinity System, and these people are in the simulation, and it simulates them being on another planet, when they're still colonizing, getting everything built and ready. So not everybody in this simulation knows that they're in a simulation, and not everybody who's in this simulation is necessarily willing to be in the simulation. And then the kicker is, if you die in the simulation, you get put right back in. And every time you die and get put back in, a little less of your sanity makes the trip along with you.
Oh, that's dark. I like it.
So it was fun coming up with the idea. I remember Matt and I talking about it.
The concept, I remember when I went into the service, they were like, here's the thing, right? You have 9 marbles, and the higher you go, the more they take those marbles away. And those marbles represent your sanity.
Yeah. So not even knowing it, that's a great way to put it. It's like everybody has a bag of marbles, but every time you die in the Infinity System, you get one of those marbles taken away. You get put right back in.
I think they stole that from the Peter Pan movie with Robin Williams.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah. So it's been
steals everything. It's okay.
No, there's only one thief in the army. Everyone else is just getting their crap back.
I never stole. I just acquired.
That's right. All right. So now that we've gotten a little bit, so the Infinity System, what it is, that it's this sort of almost lit RPG type vibe to it. But how did you determine from there, like, who the characters were going to be? Is there anything you can tell us about that without spoilers?
Sure. Yeah. For me, the story kind of came out of, so I live here in Southern California, and I'll drive to Las Vegas. I have family out there, and I'll make that drive out the 15 freeway and just look at the landscape around me. So oftentimes I'd make that drive, by myself. And since I'm a filmmaker, I always look at a landscape and think, what characters would I put out there? What do I picture around that corner? Are there bandits around that ridge, or is it a crashed spaceship with an astronaut struggling for survival? And in that case, it was definitely, I could see a astronaut survivor story. And so I kind of pitched that to Jonathan. I said, I kind of envisioned this, like a space Western, this guy surviving on a desert planet, and he's in this simulation. And then Jonathan practically did all right, say no more, I got this. And we've run with it from there. And so when I read the script, he sent it to me. We had the initial conversation. We went to lunch. And then he said, okay, I'm going to get you a script. And it was probably 3 days later, and he sent me 20 pages without an ending. And it took me some time to actually get to it because I wanted to read it all in one sitting. And when I read it, I was just, turning every page. And I couldn't believe that this was just kind of the idea that I had just kind of teased, that then he ran with it. And I was just hanging on every single word of, what these characters were saying back and forth, and to kind of see it fleshed out like that was just so cool. And for me, even now reading the script, I there's parts that are funny, there's parts that are exciting, there's a potential romance there, and it for me as a fan first, of these genres, I'm reading the script as a fan, not even as a filmmaker yet. So that's been a really good sign for me, a really good feeling to know that this is something I think that will resonate with lovers of this world that we're here to talk about.
I think that's an important note too. So inside the simulation, it's a space western. That's what the vibe is, and that's what the feel is. And when we were coming up with this idea, and through this whole process to this point, everybody who's we've talked to about the project seems super excited, and I feel like doors closed, so that's not the right avenue. Like no doors have closed, from a cinematographer who's already on board, to Matt has connections with casting directors who have already said yes to helping, to an actress that I know who's already read the script, just said yes, she's in. So I don't think that anybody has said no yet. Maybe that's coming. I always tell Matt, like, maybe that's coming once we actually launch the Kickstarter. And maybe it'll happen then, or maybe after the Kickstarter and we start like filling out the rest of the roles for actors and actresses. Maybe we'll hit all those no's then. But so far, everybody said yes. So I think that's a great sign. I don't think a lot of these projects are floating around. A lot of these like fun Western sci-fi. We're not trying to preach to anybody. There's no hidden messages or agendas we're trying to get across. We're just trying to have fun.
Yeah. So we know just from years of friendship that you originally you wrote novels, Jonathan. So how hard was that for you to transition where you can write everything in narrative prose to describe the world, to switching almost to like bullet point plot outline when it comes to set directions and all of that, to write it as a script?
Oh man, it's so much easier writing scripts than writing novels, because a novel, right, is like 80,000 words. So I've written 2 other scripts that have been picked up and are in various stages of development. And even I want to say it was only like 16,000 words for an hour-and-a-half movie. So like 16,000 words compared to 80,000 words. So scripts, I feel like I can just like crank out, and it's all the same elements I would write in a book. Like it's all just like character-driven, action, having that romance, having a lot of mystery involved. Keep on asking questions, answer one question, and then ask them 2 more questions to keep the narrative going.
Okay. So not to freak out your fans, but you are still going to keep writing novels, right?
Yeah. So what I had been doing.
Just hear the fans going, wait, does that mean he's stopping writing?
No, for sure. I'm still writing novels. I had been writing a novel a month. So I'd write a book a month for the past few years. And then this year, when I knew that I wanted to kind of make the transition into writing scripts, I decided just to write 6 books this year. So I would write 6 novels, and that gave me the ability to write 3 scripts so far this year. And then I have the comic book that I'm doing, and then some other projects going on. But yeah, still writing novels.
I've had outlines that were longer than what you're saying some of these scripts are.
Those aren't outlines, JR.
Well, I mean, sometimes you have to if you're doing shared roles. So,
okay, they're Weber-style outlines.
Well, I mean, he's a man after my own heart. Him and Brandon Sanderson, they know how many words the book needs. But we're here to talk about their movie. So you've talked about a little bit about the type of characters you're going to have. Have you flushed it out to the point where character 1 is going to be John Doe and character 2 is going to be Bob Doe? Or what? Like, do you have characters already, or is it still sort of conceptual at this point?
Yeah, I think at this point we're pretty confident in the characters, and we're already looking at casting, and it'll be the goal is to make it for sure a SAG AFTRA production. Granted, it'll be a lower budget. It's certainly not it's not a Star Wars sized budget. This is indie filmmaking, but we're kind of looking at actors that we could see playing these roles. And what's so cool is in our production meetings, we've all kind of been on the same page of who we kind of envision and who we can kind of see for these characters. And that's been really fun. That's been really, really fun.
So I know that because I lurk in Jonathan's Facebook group, I know and I've been in lots of others. I manage a few where the fun things the fans of books like to do is, if they made this a movie, who would be the actor for X character, right? So when you look at a script and you're looking at this concept, how do you, as the director, because I'm assuming you're the one that makes the casting decisions, right?
No, it's definitely I mean, especially when it's low budget filmmaking, you have so many confines. Is it a union project? Is it not? And even if you got a $5 million or a $10 million budget, it doesn't mean that the actor that you want, that you could afford with that budget, is actually available or even willing to work with you.
I've seen some of those issues with like The Witcher and stuff where they had other things. So it's going to be like 2 years between season 1 and season 2.
Right.
So.
Right.
And that was before COVID happened.
So as the person making those casting decisions, and I got from what you were hinting at that Jonathan was going to have some say too, but when you look at the character descriptions, how do you turn around and say, this is what I want as the actor for fill in the blank role? Like, how do you translate that from the script, the book, whatever, onto picking the real life flesh and blood representation of?
Yeah, I think especially since this is going to be a shorter film, we're making like probably a 30-minute short film. Even if we had the dream budget, it doesn't mean I want to run out and cast a Chris Pratt or something. As much as I love that guy, he's in a lot of stuff, and so you think, all right, do I want to do something where you find a relatively unknown actor to play this part, or my thing is, if you see Daniel Craig in Knives Out, how many people are saying, well, but he's also James Bond, and how do I remove the identity of James Bond?
I think really one of my favorite things growing up watching sci-fi and fantasy, particularly more so I think with sci-fi than even fantasy, was the fact that most of the people in there were people where it was part of their big break. It may not have been that exact big break, but it was definitely, Patrick Stewart did very few things before becoming Jean-Luc Picard. And I've always liked that a lot better. Because I think it means you're bringing in a lot of a fresh face. And to be honest, I kind of like just seeing other people do things. And I know one of my favorite, the guy who, when the original Dumbledore actor died, the gentleman who's playing Gandalf was offered the part.
Yeah,
I am horrible with names. I can tell you tons of stuff about books, but actors, I'm horrible with their names.
You're way ahead of me. So you pick,
because you also do run into typecasting, and you don't want to have that because I think it doesn't do the creative work the best.
So when you were writing these, Jonathan, did you have anybody in mind, or were you just trusting that Matthew Hall was the expert and you were going to sort of lean into his experience?
No, I don't think. I think maybe for the main character, we had talked about kind of like a Clint Eastwood, John Wayne type. Mm-hmm. But I don't think for the other characters we had named actors or actresses when we started writing it. That came afterwards, after the script is written. Then we could be like, oh, we see this person as being this character. So I think just the main character, we're like, okay, we kind of want to do like a John Wayne, Clint Eastwood.
Okay.
I think as we've been going forward and also kind of setting realistic expectations of who we can get, I think our goal is to get, actors that maybe you have seen or recognize from, either certain shows or what have you, but they've never had this size of a leading part, but they come from, shows that or films that we know and love, or, but maybe they didn't get a huge starring role in that production. And I think that's kind of the angle that we're heading down now. And we have one character, and I don't want to give away too much, but he's kind of like the mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi type character, even though he's not at all like Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I feel like Jonathan and I have talked about, all right, that's the role where we can get, an established, supporting actor to kind of play a bigger part here.
Okay. So you've mentioned that this was going to be a shorter film, so you didn't have room for a Megan name. Is this because it's a short film, or is this like a pilot to a longer going series? What is your idea for the arc of this project if you got your druthers?
Yes. Yes is the answer. It's all the above. Jonathan and I have talked about, what this could be, and we certainly have fleshed out a world that I think could be explored in multiple different platforms. Ideally, I could see it being a long-term series and, potentially a feature-length film, but at the same time, and Jonathan and I talked at length about this to the sense of what do we want it to be. And I think my main point for me as a filmmaker was I want the short film to at least stand on its own, if nothing ever came from it otherwise, But with Jonathan writes, he's so efficient in his writing, and he can turn things out so quickly that it's like I'm so invested in the characters now. I want to see what happens next. And so I'd love to see it as a series. And anyway, Jonathan, you explain what you think, where we're going with it.
Yeah, no, it's I've written episode 1, and I don't usually think too much about the next project until I'm in it, right? So like when I'm in it, I'm 100% laser focused writing, just go. But if I'm not doing it, like if I'm writing something else, another novel or comic book, whatever, I'm in that. So I know that there's a lot of world to explore with Infinity System, and I see it as a TV show, but it's fun for me because I don't even really know what happens in episode 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and that's the joy for me. That's the fun part for me, being able to write. So I hope we are able to explore this world more, so we get to see. And that kind of goes into talking about the Kickstarter a little bit. Like one of the things that we talked about when Matt and I were talking about how to fund this project is, trying to find a private investor or a couple private investors, funding it ourselves, running a Kickstarter. But I think that we want to create a community around Infinity System, and hopefully they'll be able to see this, expansive world where there's a lot of possibilities and get invested too. People who love, the Western sci-fi themes, make them a part of this project. So with the Kickstarter, we're hoping to build that community around the project, and then in the process, give back to these people who we call our tribe. So in the Kickstarter, you'll be able to see a ton of really cool perks, everything from assigned posters to prop blasters that you'll be able to take home, to coming on set. We'll invite you on set to be an extra, gear you up in that Western sci-fi apparel to be an
Hey,
extra.
JR,
on
you
set.
think you could do that? Or are you just
I'd
going to
probably
hide?
still mess that up too, but it's okay. I've been shot at before. I don't need to fake it again. So what other, besides the showing up on set and the chance to be a cameo, walk on, extra, whatever, have you figured out other sort of tiers of rewards for your Kickstarter yet?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, to Jonathan's point, this is, as we all know, it's such a active community that wants to hang out with each other and support each other. And this is a project that we kind of wanted to get everyone in on the ground floor to have some say in the matter. So the perks that I'm excited about as a filmmaker, I look at it and say, all right, this sounds appealing to me. Come out and have a Zoom conference with Jonathan and I, or have a one-on-one conversation with us about what you love about sci-fi, what you want to see in films, what you don't want to see in films, and so I'm excited for like those, this kind of opportunity right here, just the four of us chatting, some of that kind of stuff, which I think will be really cool. Sharing the concept art and having that, there'll be lithographs and stuff that people can take home from that area of the production. But I think for me, all the filmmaking perks are, as a filmmaker, that's the stuff that excites me the most. Having people come out on set, and spending time with us, being in the film, the little Easter eggs, getting your name in the movie somewhere on a computer screen or something like that. So there's a lot of little nods and winks, and getting listed on the IMDb. It's a nice, easy way to add another credit to your resume. And when you're starting out, when you're young and starting out, I mean, that's a big deal.
I think
we IMDb credit forever ago.
Yeah, for sure. And we wanted to make sure that we get everybody involved in this project, no matter how much money they may or may not have. So you'll see that tier 1 is $1. So you can be part of this project, get on the newsletter, get updates, and even get something cool. I'll wait I won't say what you'll get, but you'll be able to see on the Kickstarter. At $1, we'll give you something cool too, just to be a part of this, just to be a part of this community, just to surround ourselves with our tribe.
And the other thing I'd say to that is also, I come from the school of low budget, no budget filmmaking. I've never had a budget over $200,000 for any project I've ever done. So I'm used to stretching. I'm used to stretching that, and so I think that's what you're going to see on screen is that every dollar counts, and I think you'll see every dollar, we were talking about doing this. It's like, I just want to make the movie. I'd pay to make the movie. I'd pay to direct it, so no one's getting rich here. We're just, we're doing it because we love movies, because we love this genre.
Well, and I would say, because between my time as a fan and my time on the podcast and my time as a director at DragonCon, that's what carries over the most into the work and into any kind of discussion of the work also. And because, to be honest, if you're not excited about it, why bother?
Right.
I once had somebody look at me and go, well, what should I do for my major? Something you love, because you're going to hate it by the end of it. Because you spend so much time on it. And so you really need to pick something you love. But also fans want, the coolest thing in the world as a fan is finding out that the person, and David Weber is my favorite example of this, because David Weber wrote Honor Harrington, Mill SF. The biggest Honor Harrington fan in the world is David Weber, and it's adorable.
You normally would say they drank their own Kool-Aid, but I think he made the Kool-Aid first. I don't think he was just drinking the press. I think he's a firm, real true believer.
He's truly adorable, and he's humble. Normally, when I'm saying people drank their own Kool-Aid, it's because they're a little egotistical, or more than a little. So let's turn this around. So we mentioned a little bit about how you were sort of picturing the casting. I started thinking about it. In most books, and this is true in movies too, the environment, the setting is as much a character as the people that are playing, that are whatever. So how are you guys going to handle that? Are you going to film on real locations? Is this going to be a lot of green screen because travel budgets are small? How are you handling the settings?
Yeah. We just had a really great production meeting with a cinematographer named William Helmuth, who directed one of my favorite pieces of science fiction I've seen in the last few years, called Alone, and it's currently streaming on Dust. But it's a great short film. It just was playing at Dances with Films here in LA. And the film's called Alone. And William and I worked together on the Star Wars short, which we won the top prize for. And he's an incredibly talented visionary director. And we were talking about that, and my thing is, I'm so used to shooting on location. Obviously, if I'm shooting in the Middle East, I've been filming on the Pacific Ocean. I'm used to shooting in real world, settings. And especially this being a space Western, we definitely wanted to, we're here in the American Southwest. We might as well make the best of it. So we've been talking locations for sure on how, on where we want to shoot and that sort of thing. And kind of talking about the actual logistics of mounting this production. And so that's been really exciting. But what's funny, JR, is you just said, a key phrase there is that the settings are a character themselves. And that's literally the same thing I told Jonathan, down to, the costumes that the actors wear is a character of themselves. You want to look at, all the gear that they're wearing and think, well, what does that do? I love watching classic science fiction, and I think, well, what was the purpose of that? Star Wars is so good at that. Alien is so good at that. If you look at a lot of the 1950s sci-fi with all the blinking lights in the back, you're like, what is that supposed to be? What good does those buttons do? They're not even labeled, So everything needs to have a purpose, And so I absolutely agree that the locations are a character. So we will do our best to shoot in real world locations, certainly for all the Western aspects of it. We're talking about, how exactly we want to mount the some of the other sequences that you'll see in the movie. So that's a good question that I too have. How are we going to do it all?
Okay. So, Jonathan, before you were a screenwriter, you were also a novelist, and now you are I don't know if cartoonist is the right word, comic book person. I don't know what the word for that is.
He is multimedia.
Multimedia. There we go. So are you foreseeing this infinity system becoming something that you and Matthew might write novels in, or comic books, or any of the other mediums in this universe?
Or literally.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about it. Talked about books in particular, and audiobooks and stuff like that. So I think right now I have, and we're definitely open to that in the future. I think right now I have capacity to definitely take this all the way, right? I feel strongly that we're going to get a TV show out of this. I'm just going to say it. I feel like that's going to happen. And then if that happens, then for novels, I have 2 series of my own novels going right now. But I mean, if Infinity System gets picked up, when Infinity System gets picked up for a TV show, and we have multiple episodes going, I definitely feel like I could write a series based off these books.
So you've also joined the trend towards sharing universes. You've written in some shared universes yourself, Jonathan. Is that something you foresee bringing other people in the creative spaces, be it comic book, graphic novel, other film types to work with Matthew? Is that something you see expanding, or do you want to build the fan base first and see what happens?
Yeah, so that's something that I think Matthew had brought up first, about kind of like building a world with different, products and stories and in different media streams into this. So I definitely see that as well. And then back to your point, JR, for me, I felt like let's get this done really well, the best we can do, and get it picked up. And then I think there will be tons of opportunity. I think the opportunities will come to us to be able to build out and expand this universe.
Yeah. I think one of the initial conversations we had was, when I was 11 was when Lucasfilm released Shadows of the Empire, which was right before the Star Wars special editions had come out. It was years before the prequels had even come out. But Shadows of the Empire came out, and it was a video game, it was a comic book, it was an action figure line. And I mean, that's certainly much larger than what we're anticipating, but it's like it was multiple platforms. There was a comic book series, there was the novel, by Steve Perry. Then Joel McNeely even composed a soundtrack using John Williams themes, which you hear in the video game. Oh yeah, by the way, Nintendo 64, who didn't play Shadows of the Empire? But it was everything but a movie, which is so cool. And so I kind of talked to Jonathan about that and saying, we're creating such a big world here. I could see so much stuff living in, different facets of this, which would be kind of cool. And I think, I told Jonathan the other day, I believe, fortune favors the prepared. So by the time this film, is released, the goal would be, we have potentially some screenplays to turn it into a series, or to expand it into a feature-length version. So you talked about what would come next after this first episode. Do you have a preference for something like the Netflix streaming model, where it's multiple episodes and it's an episodic storytelling, or do you think this universe is better suited to a feature-length 2-hour movie? I don't know. I think there's so much to explore. I would love to see the potential of how far we could reach. I think there's a lot of themes that you'll see exposed in the bigger story, and so many questions that have yet. I read the script and I thought, all right, now I have even more questions about what this world is about and what the end goal is and the potential there with this being a simulation and people not knowing if they're in it or not. I feel like there's so many possibilities there. And so while I would love to see it at least do a 2-hour film, I'm open to seeing it as episodic in nature. And I feel my hope is that when people see the film and read the script, which is another perk, you can have access to the script before we even shoot it. They too will say, okay, I could see it as a show, I could see it as a movie, and potentially both.
Okay. So we know, and I mentioned earlier that I think growing up in the 80s and 90s, we saw some really classic soundtracks for some of these movies. Do you already have the soundtrack sort of done? Or are you just going to license the sound, or are you going to commission something? How is that going to work for you guys?
He's sitting right in front of you.
Oh, you're doing the music?
I'm a huge John Williams fan. I've seen him in concert probably 10 times, and I even corresponded with him a few years ago. And so I come from a very classical music tradition. I've been playing piano since I was 5. So oftentimes I compose my own stuff because I'm really cheap to hire, you know. So I think that's most likely where we'll wind up, is that I'll write the music for it. But I come from a very classic, school of I grew up with James Horner, the Rocketeer score, the score we were talking about, Willow. Jerry Goldsmith's Star Trek stuff, Wrath of Khan. That's such a great score. To me, the music is just as responsible as the visuals that you see on screen. So it's an incredibly important job, and I'm up to the task simply because I'm affordable. But we're already, even on our production meetings, we've been listening to some different scores to kind of get the mood just right. And it's a little darker, a little angsty, a little grittier score. I've been listening to the score from Zero Dark 30 on repeat lately, just kind of getting the mindset. I don't know, Jonathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like music plays such an important role, right? It's almost like the landscape. It's almost like a character when you have a great score along with you. So I'm with you. I think it's a little bit darker. And I think that if a score can make you think and wonder, this one should make you think and wonder.
Okay. So we've been going for an hour and 26 minutes. I know we are recording this several weeks before this will actually go live. So was there anything that you thought before we run out of time that was super important to talk about with this project that you wanted to get out before we start the close down? Because I see Doc falling asleep on me.
I guess no, just like in closing for me, it's that we want everybody to get involved, even if that means, you can, you have $1 to spare. We want to get you involved in this. If you can share it, that would be great. But we just want everybody who loves to open a book, who loves to watch a movie and get lost in it. We want you. You're our tribe. You're our tribe. And if you love Westerns and more specifically space Westerns, the more the better.
So can we go ahead and give them a sneak peek of the concept art you shared with me?
Yeah. So it's not finalized art yet, but we will see the finalized art in the Kickstarter because it's a launch with the Kickstarter. So you'll be able to see the final in the Kickstarter.
So I can see the Firefly feel to this.
Oh, yeah, there's a bit of Cowboy Bebop feel to it too, particularly with the gentleman on the end.
Yeah.
I love Cowboy Bebop. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You don't have to be sorry.
She gets a little nerdy about that kind of stuff. It's okay.
What? I'm a little nervous about the live action Cowboy Bebop, to be honest.
So there's our characters. On the left is Wayne, in the middle is Deacon, and on the far right is Jake.
All right. So we've talked about Matthew. You're the filmmaker and the music maker. Were you also the art maker?
No.
Or the candlestick maker? I don't know. I'm just checking.
The candlestick maker, yeah. No, I drew some primitive sketches and on some paper, and I sent them to Jonathan, and he ran with it with his team. So that's my only. But it's been fun. We've been just kind of sharing, like Etsy, not Etsy, but Pinterest photos back and forth, just kind of saying, all right, what do you like about this? What do you like about that? Is that too Western? Is that not enough Western?
Have you seen Trigun?
I have not, no.
No, you can look at Trigun because there's particularly the one on the end with the thing that goes across. He's got some Trigun vibe to him. It's a Western anime.
I haven't watched all of the episodes, but I've started.
You watch all of it to get some of the vibe. So as the anime fans want to come and get me,
it's okay. We'll protect you with the internet shields. So as this project gets closer and closer to fruition, you're definitely invited back to Nerd Out because this is something we've not talked about before. And it's definitely something I find fascinating. Do you going to have a website? Or are you going to build community on like a Facebook group or any of the other social media platforms? What is the tribe? Where are you going to have tribe headquarters at if people wanted to track you down?
So we'll have a newsletter going out with the Kickstarter. The newsletter will just be for film. So anybody who goes ahead and helps us with one of the tiers on Kickstarter will get on the newsletter, so you'll get updates. And then if you wanted to come and join the community, there's a Facebook group that we have where you can come, Jonathan Yanez Reading Wolves, where I'm already talking to people about this. They're kind of like, the tip of the spear, the people who already read books that I write and who enjoy those stories. So they're welcome to come there as well as we start to build this community out.
Okay. So was there anything that you wanted to tell us about this project that we didn't think to ask? Because like I said, this is new territory for Doc and I, so we're sort of feeling our way out there. Mostly it was introduction questions and then ask whatever we thought about on the moment. And if you've known me for very long, that doesn't often end well. I got brain rattled a few times overseas. So
started that way.
Probably, but I have the perfect excuse with those IEDs, so I'm going to run with it. All right. But was there anything that we didn't ask that you feel like they need to know this about this project?
No, I think it's we're fans. This is a project for fans by the fans. This is I've only done one Kickstarter years ago, but all my other films have been privately invested, and it was very clear that this is a project that we want to go to the fans first because we want to celebrate that community and get their input on things, and kind of sharing the experience, like I said, from the ground floor.
So speaking of sharing in that experience, presumably once this goes live, you're going to share it at the Cannes something film festival.
Well, we'll see where things go, but I think we'll definitely get it to some film festivals, and hopefully we're playing in areas that near some of your viewers and your listeners, and get a chance to meet up and share in that experience.
Is it going to be possible, and forgive me, like I said, in total ignorance, but is it going to be possible for people that aren't near those festivals to actually get to see the film? How's that going to work?
Absolutely, yeah. If you sign up on the Kickstarter, you potentially could get a download link depending on what tier you jump in at. You can get a Blu-ray. I still collect physical media, so I get my stuff on Blu-ray, and I think there's something for everyone. If you're a film fan, if you're a film collector, if you love the artwork, getting in on the Kickstarter, there's plenty of different ways that there's something for everyone on there.
Outstanding. All right, so we will link that, dear listener. The Kickstarter will be linked in the show notes, so be sure to scroll down below the fold, as they say, and that link will be there. And contribute as much as your wallet will tolerate, because it sounds interesting. And all right, so as we bring this home, Jonathan, where can listeners and readers find you?
Probably the best place is if you're into Facebook, it's Jonathan Yanez Reading Wolves. It's a community. That's what we call our community, the pack. So everybody joins as part of our wolf pack. Just basically means that we are, no matter where we are in the world, you're part of our tribe, part of our pack, right? We have some common ground to share. Call each other's brothers and sisters there. And then if you're more into newsletter, if you want to try to stay off Facebook, you can just go to jonathan-yanez.com and you can sign up for our newsletter there as well.
All right. And what about you, Matthew? Where can they find you? Do you have like a central landing page or just the IMBD? I hope I got that
right. You can send all hate mail to @MatthewCharlesHall via Instagram. That's probably the best way to reach out to me.
All right. So this is the part of the wrap up, dear listener, where we tell you the link for the Kickstarter will be in the show notes. So go check it out. Click the link. Dang it. And as usual, reviews matter. So please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. They help the right reader or movie viewer find the right book or film. So yeah, that does help. And try to not to channel your inner Cisca and Ebert. Yeah, I'm butchering the stock. Stop laughing. But yeah, just be human, be nice, gentle, whatever. And all right, Doc, where can they find us? I'm gonna make you repeat this to me this time, since you mock me so.
I don't mock you.
I see what you're doing. You. Are you up for it, or you want me to read it?
I can do it. I can do anything you can do better. Duh.
It'll be the first time ever. Let's go. We fight like we're brothers and sisters. It's just what we do.
So you can find us on our website at anchor.fm/blastersandblades.com.
No. Anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades, no.com. You are fired. All right. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. We're over on the Twitters at SF_fantasy_show. You see what I mean? She's mocking me. SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Send all of the hate mail to Doc Cisca at blastersandbladespodcast.com. I promise it's real. And if somebody's really answering that, I apologize for nothing. We have a Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. /group/Blasters and Blades Podcast. You can support the show over on our website at anchor.fm/Blasters Tech and Tech Blades on a monthly reoccurring subscription model, or you can support the show on buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast. We will keep Doc Cisca and Nick Garber duly intoxicated. They will drink until their liver surrenders.
Never give up, never surrender. And Nick doesn't get it.
He's got to work for his supper, right? We got to get him on a few episodes. But, that whole urinalysis thing and wearing a badge, like, it sort of limits his ability to have fun. You don't have that problem. You just blow up a science lab if you mess up.
Fireballs are fun.
All right, Doc, bring it home.
Okay. So thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Nick Garber, J.R. Handley, I'm Cisca. This was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week, same time, where we indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, all things that go boom, torturing JR, and do not forget to go to the Kickstarter and to share this so that more people can find out.
All right.